Hello, homeschool friends, and welcome to this episode of the Homeschool High School Podcast from 7sistershomeschool.com and brought to you by the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. I'm Sabrina, and this morning I get to be with two of my sisters. Who's here?
Hey,
Vicky.
and Kim.
Yeah, I
And you.
love when we're together.
Yeah, there might be a seeing eye puppy or two in the background.
Oh, yes. If we hear snuffling or barking or jingling of collars and such, that's just good stuff because that reminds us that there are puppies being raised to be trained as helper dogs.
Yes,
So,
indeed.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. How do I segue from that? Well, sometimes when you get to the end of homeschooling high school, you wish that there was a helper dog who could walk you through the graduation process. But, to my knowledge, there are no puppies being raised for that particular kind of helping at this time in the U.S.
I was just going to say when the seeing eye puppies finish their training, they have a graduation.
They graduate. See, that would have been a much better segue. Mine was pretty convoluted.
But I like yours better. It was more creative.
Someday, Sabrina, we have to do a book of segues for the intro.
Yes.
And we definitely need a T-shirt collection from Kim's saying.
Definitely.
Yep.
Definitely. Oh my. So since there are no seeing eye helper dog, graduation helper dogs, we're going to be your homeschooling big sisters, and we're going to try to walk you through a little bit of what that's like. So first of all,
you bet.
It's okay if it's emotionally complicated, moms and dads.
Yes. Right. Yep.
Yeah. It's often a mixed bag. And so we are going to share some of our experiences coming into graduation and ceremonies and parties and how do you mark things. And we're also going to remind you through all of this that there is not one right way to graduate your kids from homeschool high school.
Seriously. Yep.
Yeah. So let's see. Among us, we have 13, right? Among the three of us, we have 13 kids who graduated from homeschool high school. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Wow.
And that's not all of the 7 sisters.
And that's not all the 7 sisters. It's just the 3 who showed up on the podcast today. Yeah, so we have had multiple experiences, and I would say that very few of them were exactly alike. Perhaps none.
Yeah, even the identical twins, kind of, sort of, but not exactly.
So let's kind of lump this into a couple of categories, shall we? Okay, we'll talk about first we'll talk about the actual ceremony. Mm-hmm. How do you formally do this? Yeah. Then we'll talk about ways to celebrate in a more personal way after the fact. And then we'll talk about those mixed emotions for both student and parents and see if we can give you a little bit of encouraging big sistering if you are looking toward that finish line anytime soon. All right. So first, formalities. There is something lovely about formal moments. I'm not a big formal person in general, but I do love a nice ceremony now and again.
I tell you, my kids had never been to graduation ceremonies when it came time for them to graduate high school. And so they were going like, what's the big deal? Especially my oldest kids.
Yep.
And I said, listen, you may not have any idea, but I need to see you walk across the stage. And I have earned that. So you are going to do that because we have that need for closure.
Yeah.
And to do it in a ceremony feels so much more like, yes, we've got some closure here. So there's not one right way, but I needed that personally. And so we had closure together. Like our umbrella school had a ceremony every year, still does. And it's all the kids would walk across the stage in
caps and gowns. Yep.
And the parents would flip the tassel, which it's because homeschooling is a much more involved family process than your traditional schooling. Yep.
Right.
Vicki, I love that you mentioned what you needed. And I think I remember all of us at different times talking about this too. because it is so important to honor where we are as parents when we have been so invested in their homeschooling over the years, and no matter what your homeschooling looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our kids became more and more independent learners as they went through high school. So sitting down with them side by side didn't happen as often. The more they were learning in co-ops or group classes at the umbrella school, or things online, things that they were interested on their own. But we were still the overseers and the check-inners and the end responsibility. And that took a lot of time and emotion. So
yes, it really did. Yeah. And there's a piece of, I like you saying closure, Vicki, and I also like the word validation. And this is not external validation from some state board somewhere saying this student has met the requirements for a high school education. It's the validation of essentially coming out of our home and in a public venue, gathering with other people and saying, we did this. We did this. We did high school. And it is, it was kind of like, for me, it was like bringing internal validation that I had already given myself, but being brave enough to sort of put it on a more public stage. And that was really empowering for me. It was funny because one of my kids who struggled quite a bit with self-confidence in teens and early adulthood, but has talked about, looking back on it now that this one's in their 30s, talked about feeling like it was kind of like imposter syndrome or whatever, feeling like, I don't know that I really deserve like a high school graduation. And then coming back and looking at the diploma and at pictures from graduation and gradually settling into, no, this is legit. I really did do this. I really did. So yeah, so it can be really important for students and for parents both to have some kind of a formal moment. Now, how you do that in practical terms is as varied as homeschool families are varied. So for all of us, for the three of us, we had participated for many years in an umbrella school and in co-op settings with a bunch of the same families. And so we borrowed a church for the day. And we placed an order for caps and gowns, together, all of us did a group order and all that stuff. And we planned our ceremony together. But I have been to many homeschool graduation ceremonies where an individual family or 2 or 3 families came together, did something much smaller, but still very formal. In one case, it was a really big deal that the graduating senior had made her own graduation dress because design and fashion design and stuff was a part of what her wiring was, and so there was no cap and gown, but there was this very particular outfit worn on that day, right? So there can be really, really lovely formal elements in a much smaller, less traditional thing where there's no one playing pomp and circumstance on the piano,
One of the graduations that I helped officiate in someone's backyard years ago was with one of our local homeschoolers, and I'd been her academic advisor through graduation. But we, at our graduation ceremonies, we could only let X number of people come because our churches were of a limited size that we could get hold of. So she had this huge family, like 50 cousins and stuff, and they were all very close. And everybody wanted to come. So they just had a graduation ceremony in the backyard, and they sang music, and I gave a little talk and gave her diploma, and she walked across the backyard with everyone cheering, and the parents, moved the tassel from one side to the other of the cap. But that was their way of saying what we value most is the family experience together. Because it's not one right way. So they had a ceremony. There was a walk across the backyard, and there was a little talk. But it was their way. And this is a wonderful thing about homeschooling is you meet your kids' needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they were able to meet their family's needs. And no matter what school you go to, you're probably not going to be able to have 50 people come unless you do something.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really neat.
Yeah, even the ones that they hold in big arenas, you're allowed to invite 4 people or whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always limited. So that's great if it's important. If your extended family is close and you want them all there, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
So for this family, then they just moved right into a party afterwards. So the celebration part. How's that for a segue?
That's a great
That
segue.
was such a good segue.
No
That was
puppies
such a good
required.
Now the segue nerds here.
Yeah. What do we do? What do we do then to celebrate after the fact? And this, I feel like, has a little bit less to do with the parent and more to do with the student, because that formal thing, when you have someone who is young, they haven't had a whole lot of life experience. They haven't been to a lot of weddings. They haven't seen someone honored by the city for their civic involvement. They haven't that formal thing may not really rank that high, but a party with their people on their terms, like they know that. And so the parents maybe need to have a little bit more of a say in the formal ceremony piece, and then what the kids need is so important. So I'm going to start. One of my favorite graduation party experiences was when we partnered up with one of my kids' best friends, and our 2 families hosted together. I had the huge backyard, so we had it in my huge backyard. But we pooled resources, and that made catering the food and all that possible, so that we didn't just have to make everything ourselves. We were able to bring some limited funds together and do some catered stuff. And we ended up one of the extended family members agreed to rent a giant blow-up slide. And so it's not something I ever would have done for my single kid graduating. But because we were bringing these 2 families and all of their people together, and because the friends overlapped so much between these 2, because they were best friends. So you had a whole lot of people who really were relaxed around each other. The parents all pretty much knew each other. It was a super fun, I think everybody was able to just let down and be themselves kind of party. And it was great. It was because we brought the 2 families together to do it. So that was probably my favorite. Don't tell my other kids. The parties were great too, but that one was probably my favorite.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you guys?
I can give a cautionary tale.
Go for it, Vicky. Yeah.
All right. So when my oldest graduated, this was back in the hills, so we were the first graduating class at our umbrella school. There were still dinosaurs chasing us around the parking lot. And so we had to have a graduation ceremony. I needed that. But I felt so guilty that my son wouldn't have a special party afterwards. And a few relatives were coming from out of state, and we should have a party because that's what you're supposed to do. So Mom, I told my oldest, we need to have a party. I told him. If you know my oldest, he has opinions about things. All my kids do. So he says, I don't understand this. I don't want this, but I'm going to go with the flow because I'm a nice person. So the relatives came, the friends dropped by, and, everybody's doing. And as soon as he could, he said, can me and my friends go hang out at their house? And so he stayed long enough, just a couple of hours, and did all the socializing. Then the next day he came to me and says, so next time you want to throw me a party, can you just let me decide? And so even on college graduations, I said, what do you guys want to do? So from then on, I asked my kids, what do you want to do? So my kids were all, they liked going to parties, but they didn't like the responsibility of giving.
Okay.
And they didn't want to have to host. So they always had parties to go to. Like
it's a lot. That's fair.
Yeah, that is a really good point. The being the host sometimes feels really fun, even if that's in your comfort zone. But it's also like sometimes it's like they do want to go hang out with their friends, and if there's a ton of family members, so sometimes we've found other ways to celebrate with family, so that a party could
It's a
be
friend
more
party.
for the friend thing. Yeah. So there was less,
So
less tug and pull.
yeah, my
Yeah.
daughter, when she graduated, she just wanted her and her good friends to all go out and eat pizza together. So they
Mm.
left the graduation ceremony, said see y'all, and went to Pizza Hut. And that's what they
Mhm.
wanted for graduation. So I learned you go with the flow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We
Yeah.
had one that wanted a party. We liked to kind of have big celebrations, and didn't really have much of a preference about anything until about 2 days before, and we mentioned something about cake, and they were absolutely adamant that there was not going to be a cake because people don't want graduation cake at graduation parties. And and we were
I
like a
love
little
it.
like, wait, is that left field or wait, is that left field? I'm not sure. Either way, they came out of left field, and there was like a lot of like, where is this coming from? But realizing that there had been no
Was
expression
this
of
child traumatized by cake at some point early in their childhood?
no clue. But
Cake
I can't
trauma.
remember even if we ended up having cake or not. I think we punted on cake, and I think we had like maybe brownies and a soft pretzel tray. And when there's only one little thing expressed in preference about the
You
entire
gotta
thing,
honor that.
you got to honor that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh my
It was
goodness,
kind of
that's so funny.
funny. It really was. It's just really surprised us. Yeah.
Kim,
Yeah.
I remember when your twins graduated, you
Mm.
made a big poster board with pictures from their infancy and early
Oh,
childhood
right.
over the ages.
Yeah.
And people were supposed to guess which twin was which.
Yeah.
And they're identical twins. And
Yeah.
I was
That
one
was
of the
cool.
top guessers. I must, yes.
Yeah, we still have that little stack of pictures here somewhere. They never got put back with the other ones. And just for fun, sometimes we pull them out and we'll have a family quiz. And then there's always the wait, that's not right. This one's that one. Yeah, it was very fun. That was fun. Yeah, added little. Yeah, and we've seen people add little games to parties, especially maybe people like to do like a slideshow kind of thing. So they'll
We
just
did
have something
slideshows.
running, yeah, on a laptop or a TV somewhere. And we've seen people like make them into little games. One of my favorite things people did was have a Jenga game and have people write messages to the graduate on the different Jenga pieces.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of interesting things that people did. There's a whole bunch of them, but those are ones that stuck out in my mind.
So a lot of what we're pointing to is that all the things that people do for graduation from traditional public school or private school or whatever,
Mhm.
they work just fine when
Yeah.
you graduate from homeschool. The
Yeah.
the added piece that you want to factor in is just like your family made schooling your own. You should
Mm.
make the graduation from high school your own too, and
Mhm.
still really honor whatever your family's flavor of homeschooling has been and the
Great.
personal preferences of parents and children.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's just, but without identical twin confusion, there can still be confusion in
Mm.
your emotions when it comes to high school graduation.
Yeah.
Was that a good segue or what,
That was
right?
a
You
good
won.
one.
You won.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
So that confusion, oh, it's pretty universal. I
Mm,
don't know much of
Mm.
any homeschooler, especially if you homeschooled K through 12,
mhm.
Yeah.
who only felt one thing, either relief
Mm.
or sadness.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Um, it's mixed, and I think
Hmm.
that my best advice to my younger self, if I could go back and chat with her, is that you're not only allowed to feel this way, it's really healthy to feel this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
to honor those feelings. Yeah.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
had a season where a bunch of us within the same year or two all finished homeschooling, and for many of us it was multiple kids.
Yeah.
um and so it was really like not only a graduation and not only the end of maybe mom's homeschooling, but also like the end of an era in families even.
Yeah.
And so one of the parents coined this term Omega parents.
Yeah.
Because, you got your Alpha and your Omega, and this was your last one. And some of us got together and went out to breakfast, I think, while the kids were doing something graduation-y.
We did that several times, all us Omega moms. It was so helpful to talk about what we were feeling, and like, it was like our graduation ceremony, going out together.
Yeah. I think it was our last ones. One of the parents who was in that thing had made up a little sign that they held up like right after they did the tassel or something that just said "my last one" or "I'm graduating too," like some little thing to kind of, and they kind of like started passing it down the line. It was very interesting. Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah,
there's so much. There is so much sense of like a culmination when you get to high school graduation, and you are so struck by unexpected memories and pieces of the puzzle and things that you maybe didn't realize how significant they were while they were happening. You suddenly realize the significance when you get closer and closer to graduation, and some of it can be heavy. And some of it can be super inspiring and delightful. And a lot of it points toward the things that you are hoping for your child for the next season. And when they are younger, we hope for all sorts of things for them. Of course, from before they're born, we're already hoping for things for them, right? But there's something about this end of homeschooling high school where you have gotten to be not observing from a distance, but a part of that whole process. But it has culminated in an end to that front row seat. And you know that you are going to be observing from a greater distance going forward. And that's as it should be. That's exactly what you've been raising them for, right? We aren't raising children, we're raising adults. They're children for a time, and what they're raised into then is an adult who's ready to go. But there is a weirdness. You're losing that proximity in some sense, and some of that is a huge relief. Woohoo! I don't have to grade any more essays. Yes, but some of it is not so exciting, and so so it's not only okay to feel all of that and honor it. It's probably really important too. In order to be healthy, because otherwise you step into the next season either shrugging and wiping your hands of everything, and now they just have to go figure out job or military or college or whatever on missions on their own. And you're like, yeah, you got this, you're an adult, go. And they're like, I'm actually a fairly new adult, so a little bit, a little bit. Or you want a helicopter parent, and you want to snowplow, and you want to go before, and that's not helping anybody. So really let yourself healthily experience that tension, and it will play out well for you and your kids, your newly adult kids.
Right. And talk to them and be honest about it too. That really helps. Yep. Follow Vicky's lead with the graduation parties. Talk to them.
That's right. Talk to them. Talk to them.
Yeah.
So if you're getting close to the finish line for homeschool high school, good for you, and good for your kid, and yay, good for your community. And however you decide to mark that culmination point, let it be an extension of, a continuation of what your homeschooling has always been. Talk to your kids, talk to your spouse, talk to people in your community who have been alongside all the way, and make it yours. That's our best big sister advice, right?
Awesome. Yes.
All right. So we hope that encourages you, and we hope that you will continue to tune in for encouragement and practical advice and ideas and whatever else, homeschooling enthusiasm from your big sisters at 7sistershomeschool.com. And we are grateful for our host network, the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. Till next time, guys.
Yay. See ya. Go Birds.